All right, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we have a good little group here, which is great. I appreciate you taking out some time from your day to talk about phone interview and email etiquette. Hopefully, what we talk about today is going to be valuable for you and helpful as you move through the interview process coming out of school. So first off, um, just want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Samantha Gillette. I am the recruiting manager with Sunrise Technologies. I've been working at Sunrise for about a little over 5 years at this point, and started as a senior recruiter at Sunrise, and am now working with our team to help guide the overall strategy of what we do in regards to recruiting, and specifically working very heavily with our college recruiting. So phone interviews and emails from students are something that I get all the time. So I'm very passionate about what I do. I love recruiting. I love helping, especially students, um, start their job, their career, and just kind of finding that first place to land. And oftentimes, especially at Sunrise, we have people join us out of school and stay for a very long time, which is wonderful. The reason that phone interviews and emails are something to talk about is because it is a big component of your first impression. Your interview really starts with that initial email between you and the recruiter, or that initial LinkedIn message. And I think sometimes we don't give very much weight to that initial correspondence because it just feels like, the entry point to get to the interview. But it's really where the recruiter starts to form their image of you, and you're starting to form the image, the image that you have in your head of the company and of the people that work there and of the culture. So every step of the interview process really does matter, from the introductions to emails, phone interviews, face-to-face interviews. Every little piece matters. So with that in mind, what we're going to talk about today are, of course, emails and phone interviews. And then we threw in a bonus talking about virtual interviews, because depending on who you talk to, virtual interviews kind of go with phone interviews, but they're also sort of face-to-face interviews. They're sort of in a category of their own. So we're going to talk about those just as a bonus. And then we'll save questions for the end. This is being recorded, so we'll hold questions to the end in case they want to cut the presentation after recording before questions. All right, so emails. And every time I talk about an email, I'm also talking about LinkedIn messages as well, because at this point, they're kind of one and the same. You may have a recruiter reaching out to you via email, but they also just as likely are reaching out to you on LinkedIn. So the same rules apply. So when you're talking about an email, a couple things to keep in mind. Address the email that you're writing to a person rather than to whom it may concern. And this is, of course, when you can. When we post our jobs at Sunrise, a lot of times we will put our general HR mailbox on the email. So it'll say careers@sunrise.co is listed as the email address. So of course, if you have a general email like that, you'll want to use to whom it may concern, because you don't know if I'm reading that or if our senior recruiter, Natalie, is reading that email. But if you know that you're emailing me, or you know that you're emailing her, it is always best to address the email to that person. Something else to consider is you want to tone proof your emails. So on the negative side, you want to avoid sarcasm, puns, slang. You don't want to come off too casual. You also want to use positive tone words versus negative tone words. So an example of this would be, the negative would be if you were asking, about next steps, something like, I'd like to know the next steps so I can keep moving in the process. That sounds a little forceful. There's a lot of I in there. A more positive way to say that would be, typically, what are the next steps in the interview process? I'm very interested in moving forward. So do you see how that's different? One is more negative and one is more positive, or a little more soft. Something a little more tangible is to avoid using all caps or excessive punctuation. And this is something I have to personally be careful with, because I'm a very passionate person, and I like to use my hands and speak. And so I'm really trying to convey my message in my emails. And sometimes, I want to use all caps or use lots of question marks or exclamation marks. And that can come across in a way that you don't want it to, depending on the mood of the reader. And since you don't know that, it's best to just avoid those things. Another piece, you want to check your grammar and spelling. Again, this is first impression. So I think every employer is really looking for someone that's going to pay attention to details. And if you send an email to a recruiter or a hiring manager that has misspelled words or obviously incorrect grammar, then that's something that's probably going to stand out to them, and not in the way that you want to stand out. Something that I see often right now is people not using their personal voice, and they start to sound a little bit robotic or impersonal, like there's an email that's just kind of a canned email that they're sending to everyone. So make sure when you're writing an email to really use your personal voice. And I've got a sample that we're going to look at in a minute. When you're emailing a recruiter or a hiring manager for the first time, I recommend attaching your resume and including a signature line with a phone number. These two things kind of go hand in hand, because they really just make it easy for the recruiter or the hiring manager to search back and get that information anytime they need it. Even if you did apply on Handshake or on that company's career site, it makes it easy for them if they just have that information in their inbox. And you definitely want to make it easy for them to find your resume. So looking at a sample email, and this is, I'm a student here, and Natalie, as I mentioned, is our senior recruiter. So this email, in our fictitious scenario, I have just met her at the career fair the day before, maybe the Business Horizons career fair. So this is absolutely written in my tone. Good afternoon, Natalie. Thank you for taking time to speak with me at the career fair yesterday. It was great to learn more about Sunrise Technologies and the Fast Tracks program. I was especially excited to learn about the Microsoft training and the opportunity to work on real ERP projects so soon after starting. We've covered ERP systems in my BIT classes, and I found the subject matter very interesting. I'm excited to explore a career in this field. I'm very interested in continuing the interview process, so I've attached my resume for your review. I've also applied to the job posting on Handshake. Please let me know if there's anything else you need from me at this time. Thanks again. Sincerely, Samantha Gillette. And I graduated from Elon, so I put that in there. And then, of course, my phone number. So this just follows up, lets her know that I'm interested, and kind of circles back to a couple things that we're going to talk about with other just general interview etiquette. So I hope this is helpful. For phone interviews, I want to break it up into two phases. A phone interview, if you think about it, the first phase of a phone interview is really the preparation that you're going to do ahead of time. You don't just want to walk into a phone interview without having put any thought into the details of what's going to take place, whether that be the specific questions that you might be asked or things along that line. And then the second phase that we're going to talk about is the actual interview itself. So when it comes to phone interview preparation, research is the best place to start. Researching the company, whether it's the website, Handshake. I don't know if you know that companies have company pages on Handshake. Definitely go there and check them out. LinkedIn pages, Glassdoor for employee reviews. A lot of companies now have YouTube channels or Facebooks, Twitters, or Instagram accounts. So check them out, see what their brand is like, and that research that you've done will come through in your phone interview when you're speaking with either the recruiter or the hiring manager. It's okay. It's actually encouraged, I think, to connect with the person you're going to be interviewing with on LinkedIn. If you click on their profile, little fun fact, if you click on their profile but you don't send them a connection request, they can actually see that you looked at their profile. So go ahead and just send them a connection request, because they're going to know that you looked at their profile anyway. When you're looking at their profile, look at their role in the company. How long have they been with the company? Does anything stand out to you? Are you a part of a similar organization that they were a part of in college? Maybe they worked in one of their jobs was in your hometown. Just look through their profile to see if there's anything that you might be able to talk about in the interview that is, maybe outside of the norm of, why did you do this internship? What did you do? Things of that nature. When you're preparing for your phone interview, I also want to encourage you to review the job description in detail. I can't tell you how many students I've spoken with who in the fall are just so busy interviewing with multiple companies for multiple positions, and then we get on the interview call and they ask me in some form or fashion, what position am I interviewing for again? And that's never a great feeling as the recruiter, because then it makes me wonder, if you are as interested in the position as maybe another candidate. And level of interest is definitely something that employers take into consideration. All things considered equal, if you have two candidates that, same GPA, same background that's going to make them successful in the position, everything is, as I said, equal. If one is significantly more interested in the position than the other, that person naturally is going to rise to the top of your list, because most companies have a set number of offers that they can make, and they don't want to make an offer a lot of times to someone if they are confident that it's not their top choice. So reviewing the job description in detail will help you be very well-spoken and go into the interview knowing you're interviewing for, and that will instill confidence in the recruiter that yes, this is something you're interested in. Come up with at least 2 strong questions for whoever you're going to be speaking with. Again, you can revert back to the company research that you did or the information that you found out on LinkedIn about this particular person. You can ask them questions, about their personal experience, or about the values of the organization, or about maybe their most recent project and, how they achieved success in that. Be creative. Don't feel like there's just, a set type of question that you can ask. And then, not deviate from that. It's always nice when you, especially for recruiters who are doing this many times a day or a week, to have the opportunity to answer different questions. Almost every single interviewer is going to ask you if you have any questions at the end. You don't want to say that you have no questions. Having a couple questions ready to go is always the best plan. And then lastly, for preparation, make sure that you're going to be in a good location with good reception and low or no background noise. I always use the example of a roommate. If you know that you live with 3 other people and you plan to take the interview in your room, but it's during a time when your 3 roommates don't have class, the chance that they could be in the apartment is pretty high. So that might not be the best location. So you've done all this preparation, you're ready to go for the phone interview, and now it's go time. So when it's actually time for the interview, make sure that you are in your interview spot 5 to 10 minutes before the call is scheduled to start. Part of this is just to make sure that you can give yourself a minute to breathe and just relax. Maybe you had a crazy day or you had an exam and you just need to decompress for a couple minutes. The other part is that maybe there's, something that's changed with where you were planning to be. Maybe you were like, okay, I'm going to take the call in our apartment, in my room. Nobody's going to be there, but you get back to your apartment and your roommate, whose room is right beside you, is sick and coughing and sneezing, with a cold. Well, that's not going to probably be the best location. So you need to, have some time to think of a plan B. On the other side, so after the interview, you want to make sure that you have more time than you think you'll need. So be in your spot early and plan to need more time than you think you will. We tell that our candidates that phone interviews typically last between 30 minutes to an hour, but to allow for a full hour. So make sure that you do that and maybe even a little more. Be ready to talk about everything on your resume. From, if you have your job in high school on your resume, be prepared to talk about that. If you have any extracurriculars on your resume, be ready to talk about that. But if they're not on your resume, still be ready to talk about it. Whether it's your GPA, whether it's listed or not listed, additional work experience, hobbies or extracurriculars, make sure that you're just ready to talk about you and your experience, and do so in a way that's professional. Which brings me to my next point. Be professional, but still be yourself. Too casual or too formal, neither one is good. So if you feel like you want to try running through some interview questions, reach out to Career Services or reach out to Hannah or Jen in Pamplin, and they can definitely set up mock phone interviews for you so that you can work on the type of answers that you want to provide. When providing answers, provide more than yes, no answers. So if someone asks you, do you have any hobbies outside the classroom? Don't just say yes and then stop. That's kind of them baiting you to, go into more detail. Do you have any hobbies outside of the classroom? Yes, I am a part of club swimming and I joined a sorority my freshman year. And then, you can talk about that a little bit. Feel free to ask questions about the next step of the interview process if the interviewer doesn't address it. Obviously, sometimes we go ahead and address it up front. Sometimes we don't, but you are always welcome to ask what the next steps are. And then, of course, thanking them for their time at the end of the interview is always a good touch. When it comes to virtual face-to-face interviews, the rules are the same for everything that we've talked about with phone interviews, as far as being prepared, being ready for their questions, having a couple questions prepared and in your back pocket. But a couple other things that are specifically related to face-to-face virtual interviews. If you're on campus, I highly suggest reserving an interview room. That's going to give you the best place to have a professional surrounding and good cell connection, good internet connection, and a good place with low background noise. If you're not on campus, again, pre-plan to have space that's available where people aren't going to be walking around behind you, especially unannounced. We've all seen some funny things at this point with what's going on in the world right now. And so we don't want you to become, a meme or anything like that. Test your internet connection wherever you plan to take the call. If you plan to be in a classroom or an interview room or, somewhere off campus, just go there and test the internet connection. And if you have the flexibility, ask the recruiter to set up a test call with you. So some people will use Skype, some people use Zoom, there's Teams, there's Blue Jeans, there's all kinds of different virtual meeting tools. And so if one that you're using is unfamiliar to you, go ahead and set up a test call with the recruiter to make sure that you know how to use the microphone and the camera correctly. It is a face-to-face interview, so you do want to take into account what you look like. You may want to, again, with the test call that you set up with the recruiter, wear what you're going to wear and see what it looks like on camera. You may want to make sure to wear an appropriate and professional outfit. And again, not wanting to become a meme, make sure to wear pants. Too many of those are going around right now. They're funny, but you don't want to become one. And then lastly, remember to smile. You are talking to, your laptop or desktop, but smiling still goes a long way because they're looking at your face, even though it's through a camera screen. And then to every interview, whether it's a phone interview, a virtual interview, or an actual face-to-face interview, always follow up and seal the deal. Send a follow-up email to the person that you interviewed with and express your appreciation. Reiterate why you're interested in the position and the company. Connect your background to the experience, and then confirm your interest in moving forward in the interview process. A couple years ago, handwritten thank you notes, we were kind of on the bubble of, is it handwritten notes or is it emails? Which way do we go? But the process these days tends to move quicker than a handwritten thank you note can be delivered. So don't wait for snail mail to arrive. Go ahead and send that email and follow all of these steps to make sure that you're continuing to build that positive impression with the recruiter and the hiring manager. All right, and lastly, a couple of interview don'ts. And yes, these really happened. So don't ask, what are my chances of getting the job? Do express your interest in the position. Don't chew gum, eat, or drink. And that goes for phone interviews, virtual interviews, or on-site. Eat and drink before the interview. Make sure you've got a appropriately full tummy. Don't take your phone interview in a bathroom. Yes, that has happened. Pre-plan a quiet space like we've talked about. Don't stand up an interviewer. If you are no longer interested in the position or the company, go ahead and just email the person that you were scheduled to speak with, or the recruiter if you don't have that person's contact information, and just let them know you're no longer interested and that you would like to cancel the interview. One piece about that, I would suggest doing that within, 24 hours. So if you have an interview scheduled at Tuesday at 2 o'clock, don't email them Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I would, try to email them on Monday at least 24 hours before. And then lastly, don't copy and paste follow-up emails or any email and forget to change some of the information. You definitely want to write unique, sincere emails to the interviewer or to a recruiter at any stage of the process, whether it's after a call or before. I've received a couple emails. It happens at least once a season where someone will email me and they were clearly copying and pasting an email that was either intended for a different company or a different position, and that's always a little embarrassing for them. So these are our tips. This is what we think will help you be successful as you move through the recruiting season, whether that's right now or in the fall. My contact information is below, as well as our company website if you're interested in in learning more about Sunrise. But if anyone has any questions, I have some time to answer those.